For over 30 years, no government on Earth could find him. Not Mexico with its entire military apparatus. Not the United States with the most sophisticated surveillance technology ever created. Not the DEA with $15 million sitting on the table for anyone who could provide information leading to his capture. He did not use phones. He did not send text messages. He did not use email or encrypted apps or any digital communication whatsoever. He communicated exclusively through handwritten letters carried by trusted couriers who would rather die than reveal his location. He moved through the mountains of western Mexico like a phantom surrounded by a small army of loyal fighters who had sworn their lives to his protection. He changed locations constantly, never sleeping in the same place for more than a few days. He avoided cities, avoided roads, avoided anywhere that cameras or satellites or informants might spot him. For 3 decades, this man was the most wanted fugitive in the Western Hemisphere, and he was completely invisible. Every intelligence agency in North America was hunting him. The CIA dedicated resources. The NSA monitored communications. The DEA stationed agents throughout Mexico specifically tasked with finding him. The Mexican military conducted hundreds of operations in the mountains of Jalisco, Michoacán, and Colima searching for any trace of his presence. Billions of dollars were spent. Thousands of personnel were deployed. The most advanced technology in human history was brought to bear against one single man hiding in the mountains. And none of it worked. He was a ghost. And then on February 22nd, 2026, that ghost was found. But here is the part that nobody expected. It was not a satellite that found him. It was not a wiretap. It was not a drone or a surveillance aircraft or a breakthrough in signals intelligence. It was a woman. A secret visit to a cabin in the mountains of Jalisco. A romantic encounter that was supposed to last one night. One moment of human weakness from a man who had spent 30 years eliminating every other weakness from his life. That single visit became the thread that unraveled 3 decades of invisibility and led directly to the death of Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, alias El Mencho, the supreme leader of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel and the most wanted drug lord on the planet. But the story does not end there. Because in the aftermath of his death, the internet exploded with a completely different narrative. A story that pointed not to the real woman intelligence agencies had been tracking, but to a 25-year-old influencer and adult content creator whose life has been destroyed by a tsunami of viral lies, artificially generated photographs, and fabricated audio recordings. Tonight, we untangle the truth from the fiction. We reveal who actually led authorities to El Mencho. We examine whether she was a knowing collaborator or an unwitting pawn in an intelligence operation she never understood. And we investigate whether the influencer the internet is blaming is completely innocent and now in danger because of lies that millions of people believe are true. This is the story of how love, betrayal, surveillance, and disinformation collided in the most dramatic cartel takedown in Mexican history. And it begins with what the Mexican government has officially confirmed. On Monday, February 23, 2026, one day after El Mencho was killed, General Ricardo Trevilla Trejo, the head of Mexico's Secretary of National Defense, stood before a room full of journalists and cameras and laid out the timeline that led to the death of Mexico's most wanted man. What he described was not a story of technological triumph. It was not a story of satellite imagery or intercepted communications or artificial intelligence analysis. It was a story of old-fashioned, patient, meticulous intelligence work focused on one specific vulnerability in El Mencho's otherwise impenetrable security apparatus: his romantic life. The woman at the center of this story is Guadalupe Moreno Curiel. Her name did not surface for the first time on February 22, 2026. It first appeared publicly 4 years earlier in October 2022 when a hacker collective known as Guacamaya carried out one of the most devastating cyber attacks in Mexican history. Guacamaya breached the servers of Mexico's Secretary of National Defense and released millions of classified documents onto the internet. The leak was enormous. It contained military communications, intelligence reports, operational plans, and sensitive information about ongoing investigations into organized crime. Among the thousands of documents that spilled into public view was a National Guard intelligence report that mapped the internal structure of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel. The report was detailed and comprehensive. It identified key leaders, regional commanders, financial operators, and logistical coordinators within the CJNG hierarchy. And in that report, buried among dozens of names and aliases, was Guadalupe Moreno Curiel. She was identified as El Mencho's current romantic partner, his girlfriend, the woman who had replaced his wife Rosalinda Gonzalez Valencia in his personal life after Rosalinda was arrested in 2021 on money laundering charges. But Moreno Curiel was not listed in the report as merely a companion or a romantic interest. She appeared in a section of the document titled Regional Coordinators and Plaza Chiefs. This was significant. It suggested that she held an active operational role within the cartel structure. Not just a personal relationship with its leader, but a functional position within the organization itself. The report did not specify what her exact functions were or what territories she might have been responsible for. But her inclusion in that category meant that intelligence agencies viewed her as more than just a girlfriend. She was part of the machine. That detail would prove to be critically important 4 years later. For the period between October 2022 and February 2026, Guadalupe Moreno Curiel's name largely disappeared from public discourse. The Guacamaya leaks generated enormous controversy in Mexico, but the sheer volume of documents meant that many individual details were overlooked or forgotten by the media and the public. Moreno Curiel was one of hundreds of names in those documents, and she faded into the background. But she did not fade from the attention of intelligence agencies. Behind the scenes, Mexican military intelligence, supported by information from the United States, continued to build a picture of El Mencho's inner circle. They knew critical details about the most wanted man in the world. They knew that he had completely abandoned all electronic communications. No phones, no radios, no digital devices of any kind. He communicated exclusively through handwritten letters carried by hand from person to person through a chain of trusted intermediaries. This method was slow and inefficient, but it was virtually impossible to intercept. You cannot hack a piece of paper. You cannot triangulate the position of a handwritten note. Every letter was destroyed after being read. There was no digital trail, no metadata, no electronic signature, nothing for the NSA or the CIA or any other agency to grab onto. They knew that El Mencho lived in constant motion. He moved through the mountainous terrain that stretches across Jalisco, Michoacán, Colima, and Nayarit. These are some of the most rugged and inaccessible landscapes in Mexico. Dense forests, deep ravines, narrow mountain paths that are impassable to vehicles. Communities in these mountains are isolated and often more loyal to the cartel than to the government. El Mencho could move through this terrain with a small security detail and disappear completely. He had been doing it for decades. They knew that his operational security was extraordinary. He used body doubles. He varied his routes. He never established patterns. He trusted almost no one. His inner circle was tiny. The people who actually knew his location at any given time could probably be counted on one hand. His paranoia was legendary, and it had kept him alive through 30 years of being hunted by the most powerful law enforcement and intelligence agencies on the planet. But they also knew something else. They knew that even the most disciplined, most paranoid, most security-conscious fugitive in the world has one weakness that cannot be trained away: the need for human connection. El Mencho was not a machine. He was a man. A man who, despite his iron discipline, despite his ruthless elimination of every vulnerability, despite his decades of living like a hunted animal, still needed companionship, still needed intimacy, still needed to see the woman he loved. And that was the crack in the armor. That was the vulnerability that intelligence agencies had been waiting for. And they found it on Valentine's Day. According to General Trevilla's account to the press on February 14, 2026, Valentine's Day, military intelligence first detected movements by Guadalupe Moreno Curiel. The exact nature of how they detected her movements has not been publicly disclosed. It may have been physical surveillance by intelligence operatives on the ground. It may have been electronic monitoring of people in her orbit. It may have been information provided by an informant within the CJNG or within Moreno Curiel's personal circle. Whatever the method, they picked up her trail and they began to follow it. For 6 days they tracked her. 6 days of patient, careful surveillance. 6 days of following her movements, mapping her contacts, identifying the people she interacted with and the vehicles she used. 6 days of building a picture of where she was going and who she was going to see. Then on February 20th, they identified a critical piece of the puzzle. A trusted associate, a man close to Moreno Curiel, was observed transporting her to a cabin complex in the mountain town of Tapalpa, Jalisco. Tapalpa is a small picturesque town in the highlands of Jalisco. It is classified as a Pueblo Mágico, a magical town by the Mexican government. It is known for its pine forests, its cool mountain climate, and its rustic wooden cabins that attract tourists from Guadalajara and other cities looking for a weekend escape. But Tapalpa also sits deep within CJNG territory. The mountains around the town have been used by the cartel for years as hiding places, meeting points, and operational bases. The isolation, the dense forest cover, and the limited road access make it an ideal location for someone who does not want to be found. The cabin complex where Moreno Curiel was taken was a prearranged meeting point. El Mencho was already there waiting with his security detail. The most wanted man in Mexico was sitting in a cabin in the mountains of Jalisco waiting for the woman he loved. He had taken every precaution. He had arrived separately using a different route. His security team had swept the area. His lookouts were positioned along the approach roads. He had no electronic devices that could betray his position. He was confident that his location was secure. What he did not know was that the woman walking through the door had been followed for 6 days by military intelligence operatives who now knew exactly where he was. On February 21st, Moreno Curiel left the compound. El Mencho stayed. He remained in the cabin with his armed escort, apparently satisfied that the visit had gone undetected and that his security had not been compromised. That was his fatal mistake. With Moreno Curiel gone, and El Mencho confirmed to still be at the location, military intelligence moved to the next phase. They began planning the assault. The operational design was complex and involved 3 components. A ground force of special operations personnel who would approach the compound on foot through the mountain terrain. An aerial component consisting of 6 helicopters, including UH-60 Blackhawks armed with M134 miniguns and supported by T-6 Texan II fixed-wing aircraft. And a special operations strike team that would conduct the actual assault on the compound. The planning had to account for El Mencho's security detail, which was known to be heavily armed with military-grade weapons, including assault rifles, heavy machine guns, rocket-propelled grenades, and armored vehicles. They also had to account for the possibility that El Mencho might attempt to escape through pre-planned routes in the surrounding mountains. The operation was approved at the highest levels of the Mexican government. On the morning of February 22, 2026, they moved in. The first helicopters appeared over the mountains at approximately 7 in the morning. By 7:20, they were making tight circles over the cabin complex and the nearby ranch known as El Pinto. Minutes later, the first shots were fired. The gun battle lasted approximately 2 hours. El Mencho's security detail fought ferociously. 4 of his bodyguards were killed. 3 others, including El Mencho himself, were critically wounded. One of the wounded was Gonzalo Mendoza Gaitan, known as El Sapo, one of the CJNG's most violent and strategically important operators. El Mencho was captured alive, but critically wounded. He was evacuated by military helicopter toward Mexico City for emergency medical treatment. He died during the flight. The woman who had unwittingly revealed his hiding place was already gone. She had left the compound the day before. She was not there when the first helicopter appeared over the trees. She was not there when the bullets started flying. She was not there when the man she had come to visit bled out in the back of a military aircraft. She was already gone. And now she is a fugitive. Now here is where this story takes a turn that is both bizarre and deeply disturbing. Within hours of the Defense Department's press conference, when General Trevilla confirmed that a romantic partner had been key to locating El Mencho, but provided no specific names, the internet did what the internet always does in a vacuum of information. It filled that vacuum with speculation, conspiracy theories, and outright fabrication. And it found a target. Her name is Maria Jalisa. Maria Jalisa is a 25-year-old influencer from the state of Sonora, Mexico. She is known on social media as the Baseball Barbie. She creates content about baseball cars and lifestyle. She also produces adult content on the platform OnlyFans. She has a public relationship with another well-known influencer and streamer known as Mr. Stivent TC. She has a significant social media following. She is young, attractive, and visible. And she has absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with the Jalisco New Generation cartel. She has never met El Mencho. She has never been to Tapalpa. She has never been involved in drug trafficking or money laundering or any cartel activity of any kind. She is a content creator from Sonora who makes videos about baseball and posts pictures on Instagram. But none of that mattered. Within hours of the press conference, viral posts began appearing on Facebook X and other platforms claiming that the Mexican government had confirmed that El Mencho's capture was made possible by tracking Maria Julissa. The posts described her as one of El Mencho's companions and claimed she was involved in money laundering for the CJNG. The posts spread with terrifying speed. Thousands of shares, millions of views. The algorithm amplified the lie because the lie was more interesting than the truth. Then came the images. Photographs began circulating that allegedly showed Maria Julissa embracing El Mencho at a nightclub. In one image, she appeared to be sitting on his lap. In another, she was wearing a bulletproof vest emblazoned with CJNG insignia. The images looked convincing at first glance. But on closer examination, they showed clear signs of artificial intelligence manipulation. The lighting was inconsistent. The proportions were slightly wrong. The backgrounds contained artifacts that are characteristic of AI-generated imagery. These were not real photographs. They were fabricated using artificial intelligence tools that can now create convincing fake images in minutes. Then came the audio. A clip began circulating that allegedly captured Maria Julissa's voice celebrating El Mencho's death. The audio was grainy and distorted, but the words were clear enough to inflame public anger. Another audio clip was even more chilling. It allegedly captured El Mencho's own voice recorded during the military assault. In this fabricated recording, El Mencho supposedly blames Maria Julissa for leading authorities to his location and orders his men to find her and dismember her. This audio clip spread across social media and messaging platforms like wildfire. People believed it was real. They shared it with friends and family. They posted it on their stories. They commented with outrage and threats. And Maria Julissa's life was suddenly in danger. Every single piece of this content appears to be fabricated. The photographs show clear signs of AI manipulation. The audio clips have not been verified by any authority or any credible media organization. No Mexican government agency has ever mentioned Maria Julissa's name in connection with the El Mencho investigation or operation. Not the Defense Department, not the Attorney General's office, not the Security Ministry, not any agency at any level of government. She does not appear in any official document or press release or statement. She is not mentioned in the Guacamaya leaks. She is not mentioned in any intelligence report that has been made public. There is zero evidence connecting her to El Mencho or the CJNG in any way. Maria Julissa responded on her Instagram stories. She was visibly shaken. She denied any connection to El Mencho or the CJNG. She pointed out that it is now incredibly easy to manipulate photographs and create fake audio using artificial intelligence. She asked her followers to report every account that was spreading the misinformation. She emphasized that she would never involve herself in anything related to drug trafficking and that she values her peace and her safety. She was scared, and she had every right to be. In Mexico, cartels have a documented history of killing people based on social media rumors. People have been kidnapped, tortured, and murdered because their names appeared in viral posts that turned out to be completely false. In the narco world, accusation is often equivalent to conviction. If enough people believe that Maria Julissa was responsible for El Mencho's death, it does not matter that the belief is based on lies. The danger to her life is real regardless of the truth. The damage was already done. Her name became a trending topic across Mexican social media. Millions of people now associate her face with the fall of the most powerful drug lord in the country. The lie has traveled around the world while the truth is still putting on its shoes. And the truth is this. The woman who led authorities to El Mencho was not Maria Julissa. It was Guadalupe Moreno Curiel, a woman who was identified in classified intelligence documents 4 years ago as both El Mencho's romantic partner and an operational figure within the CJNG hierarchy. So what do we actually know about Guadalupe Moreno Curiel's role in the operation? Was she a deliberate informant who cooperated with authorities to bring down El Mencho? Or did the military simply follow her without her knowledge, using her as an unwitting beacon that led them straight to their target? The official account from General Trevilla is carefully worded. He described an intelligence operation that involved tracking Moreno Curiel's movements. He did not say that she provided information voluntarily. He did not describe her as an informant or a cooperating witness or a source. The language points to surveillance, not collaboration. She was followed to the cabin. She met with Mencho. She left. He stayed. The military confirmed his presence and launched the assault. At no point in the official narrative is Moreno Curiel described as having actively participated in or facilitated the operation. But the circumstances raise questions that the official narrative does not fully answer. Moreno Curiel was listed in classified intelligence documents as part of the CJNG's organizational structure. She was not just a girlfriend. She occupied a position within the cartel's hierarchy. She was around Mencho during his years in hiding. She knew his locations, his movements, his security arrangements. She had access to information that intelligence agencies would have paid millions to obtain. Is it possible that she was recruited as an informant at some point during the 4 years between the Guacamaya leaks and the February 2026 operation? Is it possible that her visit to the cabin was not spontaneous but arranged as part of a deal with authorities? The Joint Interagency Task Force Against Cartels, a structure under U.S. Northern Command, was reportedly involved in building the intelligence package that made the operation possible. The fact that military intelligence first detected Moreno Curiel on Valentine's Day, a full 8 days before the assault, suggests a sustained surveillance operation that required significant resources. Following one person through the mountains of Jalisco for 8 days without being detected requires trained personnel, specialized equipment, and real-time coordination. That level of capability is consistent with international cooperation, particularly with American agencies that have extensive experience in this type of operation. What we are left with is a story that is simultaneously ancient and terrifyingly modern. The most powerful drug lord in the world, a man who evaded capture for over 3 decades by rejecting every form of technology and living like a 19th century fugitive hidden in the mountains, communicating through handwritten letters, trusting no electronic device, was ultimately undone by the most human weakness imaginable. The need for love, the need for companionship, the need to see the woman he cared about, even if only for one night in a cabin in the mountains. He avoided phones and satellites and drones and wiretaps and informants and every other tool that modern intelligence agencies could deploy against him. But he could not avoid being human. He could not suppress the desire that exists in every person, no matter how powerful, no matter how disciplined, no matter how hunted, to be close to another human being. One visit, one cabin, one night. That was all it took to end 30 years of invisibility. And in the aftermath of his death, the modern world demonstrated its own unique form of danger. The internet created a parallel narrative that had nothing to do with reality. It took a 25-year-old influencer who had never met Mencho, who had never been to Jalisco, who had nothing to do with any cartel, and it turned her into the most blamed woman in Mexico. It used artificial intelligence to create fake photographs and fake audio recordings that millions of people believed were real. It spread those lies across platforms that amplified them through algorithms designed to prioritize engagement over truth. And it put an innocent person's life in genuine danger in a country where cartels kill people based on rumors. This is the new reality we live in. A reality where the truth about the most significant cartel operation in Mexican history can be drowned out by AI-generated lies within hours. A reality where an innocent person can be targeted for death because an algorithm decided that a fake story was more engaging than the real one. A reality where the line between truth and fiction has become so blurred that even life and death decisions are being made based on fabricated evidence. Guadalupe Moreno Curiel remains in the shadows. Her role in Mencho's death is still not fully understood. Her location is unknown. Her story has not been told in her own words. She may be a cooperating witness who helped bring down the most wanted man in Mexico. She may be an innocent woman who was simply followed without her knowledge. She may be something in between. We do not know, and the Mexican government is not telling. Maria Jalisa is pleading with the internet to stop spreading lies that could cost her everything. She is a 25-year-old content creator who woke up one morning to discover that millions of people believe she is responsible for the death of the most powerful drug lord in the Western Hemisphere. She has been targeted with death threats. Her face has been attached to fabricated images showing her with a man she has never met. Her voice has been cloned and put into audio recordings she never made. And there is almost nothing she can do about it because once a lie goes viral on the internet, it becomes almost impossible to kill. Somewhere in a government vault in Mexico City, the full classified file on how they finally found the ghost of Jalisco sits in a folder that the public may never see. The complete intelligence picture, the surveillance logs, the communication intercepts, the informant reports, the operational planning documents, the after-action reviews. All of it locked away behind classification markings that will keep the full truth hidden for years or possibly forever. The ghost is dead. Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, the man who built the most violent cartel in Mexican history, the man who challenged the Mexican state, the man who evaded the combined efforts of every intelligence agency in North America, for over 30 years bled out in a military helicopter over the mountains he once ruled. But the questions about who really led the hunters to his door are only beginning. Was it surveillance or was it betrayal? Was Guadalupe Moreno Curiel a knowing participant or an unwitting tool? Did she lead them to him deliberately, or did she simply love a man who happened to be the most wanted fugitive on the planet? And will the truth ever fully emerge from behind the walls of classification and political sensitivity that surround this case? We may never know the complete answers, but what we do know is this. The most disciplined, most paranoid, most security-conscious criminal in the history of the Western Hemisphere was brought down not by technology, not by military force, not by the billions of dollars spent hunting him, but by the simple human need to be with someone he loved. And in the aftermath, an innocent woman is paying the price for lies created by artificial intelligence and spread by algorithms that do not care about truth or human life. That is the real story of how they found El Mencho. Not a story of triumph, not a story of justice, a story of love and betrayal and the terrifying power of disinformation in the modern world. Subscribe for more stories about the hidden forces that shape our world. Real stories told unfiltered because the truth matters more now than it ever has before. See you soon.